You're listening to an MDS podcast. In this episode, Matt and I talk about how we got into the worship ministry, really what called us into it, the journey it's taken us on, the times where we stepped away, came back in, and of course where our lives are at now thanks to being in the ministry. All of this and so much more you are listening to the Sunday Setlist. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the Sunday Setlist. I'm Isaac Benson. I'm here with my buddy, my best friend in the world, who also hosts this podcast. That's where you normally say your name.
Oh, okay. I'll get it on the next one.
Just say your name. I'm not doing another one.
Okay, and I'm Matthew Duffy.
Oh my goodness. Matt, how are you? How have you been? It's been forever since I've actually seen you. I've talked to you a little bit, but how have things been?
Things are good. Things have been very good. My my daughter Emma is doing really well. She's learning lots and she's getting really big. And our little one on the way, Luke, is going strong. He's healthy, and we should get to see a picture of him coming soon.
Oh, is that like one of the most exciting times when you get to see the picture? Did you get to do that with Emma as well?
Yeah. I would say hearing the heartbeat would be more exciting. But yeah, seeing them where they don't look like an alien peanut anymore is also pretty exciting.
Yeah. So the heartbeat went at how many? I know everything's like measured by weeks. How many weeks do you go to hear the heartbeat?
Generally, a fetus should have a pretty strong heartbeat by like week 7, week 8. And given that we had a miscarriage with our first pregnancy that we didn't catch, we got to do a heartbeat check around week 7 this go round. And
all right, and so then this when you go and finally,
we're in the second trimester, week 20 something, I think.
Okay, so wow, that's a long time between heartbeat and getting to see the baby. Yeah. But that's exciting. That's exciting. Yeah. That's cool that so there's like multiple milestones along the way before the baby's even born. Yeah. Are there? I mean, what would be some other ones beside heartbeat and then picture? Probably feeling the child kick the first time, stuff like that.
Yeah, and we did the blood test to check for the right number of chromosomes. We did, checking for other medical deals, and one of the things that also checks is for the gender of the baby. So that's a pretty cool milestone. It's like 99% certain with the gender of the baby, and so this ultrasound coming up is basically to confirm or deny the gender results of that blood test that we got several weeks ago.
Going to be named Luke either way?
Yeah.
Putting my foot down.
Right.
Well, that's great. Did you guys do anything special for gender reveal? Like, did you guys? I know you guys didn't have like or at least it didn't seem like. I guess I wasn't invited either way. If you guys had like a party or something like that, but like, did you guys do anything special of like waiting till some moment to open the envelope or whatever?
Oh heavens, no. You know me. I don't like surprises. No. And evidently now it's a fire hazard to have a gender reveal party.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I was like, well, you see what happens to all the other ones, though.
Yeah.
Here's what I don't like about the gender reveal parties is it's usually up to the guy a lot of times to do some action that if it were me, I would screw it up so many times. Like let's put a balloon up in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's put a balloon up in the air, get a bow and arrow with fire on it, and don't miss. It's like I'm gonna screw this up. I'll just wait. So, before you know it, the balloon's all the way up in the air. You're not catching that thing. Nobody knows.
I wanted to volunteer to fill whatever it was, that they
hit
explode or something with like purple powder for paint.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Something is that when they look at it, they go, "Wait, what is it?"
I'm actually surprised that you never did like because you're such a great baker. Like, did you ever think of doing like a cake or something like that? Like, obviously you would know it, but to tell Rosanna, which I know she's not huge into surprises either, so I guess now this makes sense. At least you get cake. I don't know.
No, no, we didn't bake a cake or anything. No, she actually called me both times with both our kids. The first one I was at work, and then with this one she was at work.
Okay. All
And
right.
yeah, so not too
So
exciting. I
the
cried both times,
yeah,
but yeah.
you're gonna cry when you see the picture,
Oh,
aren't
I know.
you?
I know.
Do you save the picture? Do you can save the picture and keep it somewhere?
Yeah.
Like, do they give you copies of it? Because I know like people put them in. Like I know people
Yeah. So
who
we're
have them
not
in their billfolds and stuff.
doing the 3D one. But
Oh,
yeah,
that's weird.
yeah, the 3D ones they cost a lot extra, and it's like you can see the facial features and stuff, which are they're all askew. That kid is shoved in there, packed so tight. You know there's no way it's gonna come out looking like that. Every baby looks like a potato.
Oh boy. Way to be elegant with that. Way to
Yeah,
be.
it is. Some are
Oh,
cuter potatoes than others.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
not every baby is a cute potato. I'll say it. I'll say it on that.
Oh my. I regret asking any of this now.
I'm surprised you didn't already regret it.
All right. Well, today here on the Sunday, so it's great to be back and doing this. I think we're crazy for doing this, but we did this podcast a couple years ago. I was looking at because I had to go back and find some files for this, and it was in November of 2019, and we recorded the podcast. We put it out on Thanksgiving, I think, if I'm thinking correctly. And then not long after that, you took a break from worship leading. Is that correct? Or there's a
Yep.
reason we didn't do it after that.
Yeah. So that was a pretty hard time for me in worship ministry and for my family. We were serving at a church in North Carolina that we loved, and we felt, still feel like God led us there. He wanted us to be there. There's something for us to learn, and the uh, the work environment at that church started out okay. And then, but we were just so excited, didn't see certain red flags in the interview process, and then it just very quickly snowballed into something that we just couldn't do anymore. And so we left that church in the summer of 2020, and then I took the rest of 2020 and the first half of 2021 pretty much off of ministry. I didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Which
Started.
is not a bad time to take off anything at that point, thinking of 2020 and
Right.
2021.
Right. But it wasn't necessarily COVID that made that decision for us.
Yeah, no, I know.
But yeah, I went to work in a factory, and then I thought I would never want to do ministry again. I thought I wanted to teach. And then soon after starting to substitute teach, which I did enjoy, but I realized that teachers are superheroes to do that full time, day in and day out. And God soon delivered me from the dream of teaching once again. And
Boy, I need to pray bigger prayers.
right, he reignited a flame for ministry in me in June, actually a year ago this month.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, and that was to say, like we stopped doing it because soon after, I mean, also we had pandemic and all that stuff,
Yeah.
but I mean, soon after too, when we kind of talked about maybe starting up again, you had transitioned out, and then now we're starting it again, and I literally just transitioned out of worship ministry, so it's like we can't catch a break on this thing. So, but I think it'll be a great time of just talking about worship. And we have some people that we haven't asked yet, but we would love to maybe in the future talk to as well about their time in the ministry and or in different aspects of ministry and stuff. And so even though not both of us are in it, I think it'll still be a good
Yeah.
time.
And
Today,
it's good for us to, talk to. I know one of the guests that we want to bring in has also had some hard times in ministry, and I think it's good for us to encourage one another in that way, letting people know, especially if they're new to worship ministry, that it is definitely not sunshine and rainbows all the time. So
yeah,
we can encourage each other that way.
yeah, I got the wrong pamphlet. I thought it was the Sunshine Rainbows. The whole, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But today, you kind of got into already a little bit of how you got to where you are now. We kind of wanted to go back into talking about, what led us to worship leading in the first place. Because when I think about our two stories, I don't think I've heard your full story yet, so I'm excited to hear that. When I think about our two stories, I think they're a little bit similar. Obviously, kind of stems from our life of being raised in the church,
Mhm.
and experiencing that from the pew or from the seat, and then. But Matt, why don't you start us by telling just kind of what that journey was like, how you kind of felt the call of worship leading, and what were some of the opportunities that led you to now?
Well, yeah. So my family didn't start really going to church until I was 12. And but it's kind of funny that like that year or 11, I'm sorry, it was 2006, and since 2006 we have rarely missed a Sunday. It was just something clicked in my mom that said we need to get back into church, and she stuck to it. And I cannot credit her or thank her enough for that decision, and for
Your
her.
your grandma your grandma though had gone to church before, right?
Yes, yes. Uh,
Yeah.
both my parents' families were churched families, but my parents just stepped away from it for a long time. Um, but I would say when I started feeling called to a career, pulled towards a career in music first. And then that opened the door for worship ministry. When I was in high school, I thought I wanted to teach music, and then that started kind of a tumultuous time in my relationship with my dad that really pushed me away from him, and it just was not very supportive at all. He told me that he didn't want to come to a high school football game anymore just to watch me march. I went from being a 3-year varsity letterman to marching halftime and pregame only my senior year, and he didn't want to come and watch me march in the band. So that created some tension in my home life that I was very fortunate that I had a great worship pastor and a man who's now my father-in-law pour into me and have helped me heal that relationship. But also, when my worship pastor stepped in and started being one of my spiritual fathers, then it opened my eyes to how music can be such a beautiful form of worship. And then he left to go to a bigger church when I was a junior in high school, and recommended to the board that I should take over as the interim. Um,
So
and I,
you're a
yeah,
junior in high school, and he's
but he and I had developed a relationship over years leading up to this, and he had trained me. I was with him at basically any time the doors were open and he was there, I was there.
So you're serving, you're volunteering on Sundays already at this point, and
Yes.
doing things like that, right?
Yes. I had filled in for him when he was gone, things like that. But this was the first time that I would be doing the job, part time. And
Has he ever said? I mean, did he reach out to you at some point? I mean, did he see something in you before you saw it, or how
no,
did?
he never
I mean,
said. I was the oldest, biggest, and goofiest kid in kids choir. But I loved it. That's what I was too young for the youth group when we first started going there, but I was in kids choir with him, and he just saw that I loved music, and so he just poured into me. Never told me that he was training me to do this one day,
you
or
already knew how to. Did you know how to play at that point? How to
uh,
play piano, or did you learn from him? I can't remember about that.
he started teaching me piano when I was in sixth grade
So see,
after I had already played
he
trombone for a year.
he had to have seen something in you then. If
Yes,
he's already going to be like, hey, you need to learn
yes,
this. Hey, how about do this? Wow, that's crazy.
yeah.
That's
And
crazy.
so
See,
yeah,
that's why we need to have him on and we can ask him
yeah.
these questions.
I think he's the greatest, but I'm a little partial. But long story short, when I was filling in for that, it was a full year of an interim time, um, uh, where I was doing it part time, just 20 hours a week, and that's when I just really fell in love with the church part of music and caring for people in a deeper way than you really can with kids. Not that you don't care for the kids, but there's not as you can share your faith. You can get deeper relationships. I feel, and that's where it really opened up for me. And so in college, I switched from music ed. Started as music ed, and then switched to a more of a worship ministry approach in college. So that's what I've been doing.
So I always found it interesting because, by the way, if people didn't know, we met each other um, at a camp in high school, and then we ended up being roommates by random, actually, in college. But I remember I met you right after freshman year, and then we'd
Yeah.
see each other all the way leading up to college in the summer there. And I remember at that last United camp where we were actual campers there, you ended up leaving early or whatever. I think because of being an interim worship leader or something like that, or you were doing something with Nathan. But how was that time? I mean, that's your first. If I mean, I would say sneak peek, but you've told me before all the responsibilities you had and all the stuff. That's honestly your first like feet diving into worship ministry there. How was that time in high school of being a worship leader and figuring that role out?
As I have grown in the last 10 years, I realize now how much help I had. But it was such a great learning experience because there was, I scheduled all my volunteers. I planned and led worship. I led the rehearsals. I directed a Christmas musical. I had to do weddings and funerals. I did visitation. I directed the choir. I directed the orchestra. I had to try my hand at writing orchestrations. Um, I
So
had
when you
to.
say
I mean, it was a really good crash course for ministry at 17. It was hard.
so when you say help, are you talking about like the volunteers that were there, or
Yes, I
are you
had
talking about
a great
Nathan or
team. Well, Nathan and I obviously we kept in touch every week, and him still giving me pointers, sharing music with me, and other resources. But before he left, he put in place a team of people um, to be my worship arts committee, where I had a decorator, someone whose only job was to file away music and put my folders together. Um,
So he didn't leave you high. He didn't leave you high and dry. I mean, he left you
You had a
prepared.
really thick hedge of protection.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's awesome.
yeah. So, what
That's
about
awesome.
your call to ministry?
Yeah, because it mine was. I mean, I grew up in the church. Like I'm pretty sure my first I was adopted. I'm pretty sure my first evening of when my adopted mom brought me home was Wednesday night service, and she took me to that. So I'm pretty sure my first night was even at a church. So it's everything I can always remember of always going to church and all that stuff. But my uncle was the worship leader, and I always thought that was cool. You know that my actually both my uncles, one that was living in Frankfurt, where and at the church where we were at, was leading worship there. But then also my uncle, who lived in Ohio, would lead worship there as well. And also my family, a big part of my family's history is that my grandparents and their five children would go from church to church back in the day, singing for them, putting on revival nights, singing at camp meetings, all that stuff. So worship leading's kind of just always been the history of things, and I always appreciated that. My uncle passed away when I was my uncle who lived in Ohio passed away when I was in high school, and his wife just passed away, and so we were just at her funeral recently, sharing stories and stuff. And something that I kept bringing up was I loved it when they would come over, and when they'd come over, we'd all go out to the church on Saturday night, essentially preparing for the worship service, which later became something that I was like, man, this is such a lonely thing to do. But it was so cool to see all of them do that together. So, anyways, I remember just seeing that happen and always being intrigued by that, but never thought about myself doing it. But then when I got to high school, uh, we were going through a little bit of transition in the worship ministry at my home church. That uncle I was talking about stepped away from worship ministry after I think 30 some years, 40 some years of worship ministry. So obviously served a long time. And then to keep on bringing in uncles, I have three different uncles, and all three of them at some point in the story led worship. But my youngest uncle took over for him, and they started the worship team. So before it was my uncle Steve with my grandma playing organ and a couple people in the church playing piano and stuff like that, and that was awesome. A lot of hymns, a lot of those choruses from the '90s and early 2000s and stuff like that. But then when my uncle Joel, the younger uncle, took over, really wanted to start making a shift into some more contemporary music. They started the whole singing with track thing, and then also they still added hymns with the organ and stuff like that. But they created a worship team, which I know that that's kind of been second nature to you guys over there, and with your story, Matt. But let me tell you, when they said we're going to do a worship team, I don't think anybody in the church knew exactly what that meant. I I don't think they knew
Everything.
what that would look like. Yeah, I don't think they understood what that would look like, but and I don't think we even did. But it ended up being, like I said, the you know someone on organ or piano, and then about three of us up there, maybe four of us each week, leading the songs together. And so I ended up getting involved with that. I was originally involved with in the sound booth, and but ended up going like, hey, I'd rather be singing. And so I ended up joining the worship team as well. And that was cool, all that stuff. And then finally, my cousin took over, and really took the church in a different direction as far as really making the steps into contemporary music, but also including a praise band. So he played guitar. I ended up learning bass. He was like, "Hey, that's an instrument that you should probably learn," and I was already interested in doing that. We had someone on keys. We had people on drums, and it was the first time too that I saw just the community aspect of worship ministry too, because we were finding people in the community saying, "Hey, be a part of this," and they end up coming to the church and also getting to hear the word, which was awesome. And so that happens. cousins leave after a couple of years, and another a different couple takes over. Same thing. We're just going forward with it. But as I go into my senior year, they started giving me opportunities to lead worship when they were gone and stuff like that. And that's when I truly started to feel the call of, this is something that I enjoy doing. This is something I feel like God has given me a gift to do, of organizing. May not be the best singer, but being able to go up there and confidently lead the congregation in these songs and to create an atmosphere of worship. And so really that's where the call truly came in, was when those opportunities started to happen. And that kind of led up until college, when I moved away, and there were still some other opportunities that came about that really involved both of us. So you and I got to go back to that church sometimes and lead together. But the call came from those opportunities, and really when I met you, and hearing you talk about worship ministry and seeing you do that, we took a trip over to Ohio our freshman year, and
That's right.
And we actually recorded it, and
Right.
just getting to do that weekend with you and stuff like that. I mean, that's truly too, right, where I really felt the call as well. Of like, this is an awesome thing to be a part of. This is something I want to be a part of. Hey, I'm Isaac.
I'm Benjamin.
And if you're enjoying this podcast that you're listening to right now, then you should head on over to our podcast. What do you think about that, Ben?
Well,
okay, I need you to have more faith in this. Benjamin and I have our own podcast called the Bernie Denniston Household. What happens in the Bernie Denniston household?
Things happen here and there, and we do our taxes. Woo!
Some of us do, yes. And so you can enjoy the bantering between Ben and I as we talk about different things. We talk about working out. Benjamin. We just did a whole episode about summer. But you should join us over there. I'm also part of the MDS Podcast Network, the Bernie Denniston Household. It is uploaded every Wednesday during the summer here. So head on over.
And what time on Wednesday, good sir? What time on Wednesday?
Whatever time I hit submit. So you should join us over there at the Bernie Denniston Household. Now back to your regular programming. In college, you end up getting some more opportunities to lead worship and stuff like that.
I did. As much as I wanted you also to audition for the chapel band, you never did. But I got to play piano a couple times in chapel. I interned at two different churches 3 times. So Madison Park Church of God became our church home. And I interned there.
That was my last church home before I became a worship leader.
Yeah.
And I kind of forgot about that. It was because of you. It was because we had started going when you had gotten opportunities there, and so it was kind of cool we went back just a few weeks ago, and it was kind of cool to remember that was our place where we used to be right before.
Yeah. And that that church had really created a lot of cool opportunities for me that I may talk about later. But so interned there once, and then I went from there to do a part-time gig at a Nazarene church at Parkview Church of the Nazarene in Anderson, which will get another shout out later. And
gets a couple shout outs.
Yeah. And then after that, I went back to Madison Park for a second internship at Madison Park. And I led worship in the chapel, the School of Theology chapel, with all the pastoral students and everything. I've a couple churches in Indy I went and sang for or guest led. Yeah. So college was pretty cool. We were both in a touring brass quintet that played at a couple churches.
Horns of Jericho.
Horns of Jericho. you had me all the time at your home church at Kelly Crossing.
Yeah, there. Whenever those worship leaders would be gone, we'd go. So you said Madison Park allowed you some opportunities. I know that ended up being where Parkview ended up hearing you and all that stuff. What were some of those opportunities that Madison Park gave you?
So I interned under Pastor Steve Williamson, and he was just great. Just absolutely phenomenal worship pastor, better guy. Loved him. And Madison Park, as you know, they had the tradition of a Christmas musical that was Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And every year, the second spirit was a different literary or musical character. And so the year that I was doing it, actually, the first internship there, when I was part of it, I played euphonium in the pit orchestra for that. And then I went to Parkview. And then I may have my timeline mixed up. I may have played in the pit while I was at Parkview. 6 in one, half dozen in the other. And then my second internship there, I was in the cast as the second spirit, and I was the Beast from Beauty and the Beast. So that was really neat, and I got tons of networking. The senior pastor who was there when I did both my internships there, he was actually the senior pastor that my worship pastor growing up left my home church to go work for in another church in Ohio. So I got to meet him there because I was still heavily involved with that church. And then when I went to college, what's that?
Just a big circle.
Oh, I know. Well, that's the Church of God. But when we were in college, Pastor Paul went from Meadow Park in Columbus, Ohio, to Madison Park in Anderson, Indiana, and so we went there really to support him and help him get started, and then we just fell in love with it again. So, do
you remember? I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you remember his first sermon there? Do you remember him singing "Jesus Loves Me"?
Yes.
Just a powerful moment. I think about that often, even to this day.
Yeah. My favorite was when he recited the Sermon on the Mount from memory. He didn't preach at all. He just recited, didn't read it. He recited Jesus's words of the Sermon on the Mount. It was powerful.
Wow. Great people.
And now he's back at a church a half hour down the road from me.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Crazy. Again, full circle. Just a big circle there. That's all it is, especially around Anderson. So, all right. So I think we need to go into this because your next part of the story leads into my next part of the story. There's the people that end up going to Madison Park and they're looking for a worship leader, and they see you. It happens to be one of the Sundays that you're leading, right? And that's what takes us into Parkview.
Yeah. So I had some secret shoppers. I hope it's not too self-elevating to say it that way. From they were looking for it was a unique, strange situation that they were looking for. They were looking for a co-worship pastor because they had somebody who could do the contemporary songs, and so they wanted.
I forgot about that. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah. So my original job was to lead hymns, direct the choir, and do the youth group. That quickly changed. But yeah, so that's when I went to Parkview. I love those people. I still keep in touch with many of them, and we took it from a worship ministry that was a long time worship pastor who is very well respected and very well received, who did a great job, and then but from a different generation. And so I come in as a college kid trying to to honor what had been done, but also lead us into a new generation. And so we started doing things a touch differently, but they went with me. They were really great people.
Yeah. Yeah. And somehow you roped me into this whole
I
deal.
did. I think I
Um,
needed a tech person.
yeah. Well, so you roped me in two different ways. You roped me in with food, and you also roped me in by taking me to to a conference. We went to the worship was it 421?
424.
Was it say or 424? Okay. I knew it couldn't be worship 420. That's a different conference. But we you took you had me go with you to that one to take notes and all that stuff over the tech ministry. And then on our drive home from there, you gave me the best milkshake in the world, which I'm convinced this place doesn't exist because every time I go to Ohio, I can never find it. But
United Dairy Farm.
UDF,
Yeah.
yeah. And then as we're driving home from that, also mentioned too that we had stopped at your Mama Trish's and
Right.
gotten fed a whole bunch more.
Yeah.
And on the drive home from that, you're like, so I kind of need a tech guy. What do you think about joining on with that?
Yeah.
And and so that's how I got kind of roped into the whole thing. But I also had just helped you as well with the Christmas choir and stuff. And then it was so much fun. I mean, those people, nothing but joy is what we felt when we walked into those doors the first time. Because those people would greet you right there, super nice, wanted to get you involved in everything. So it was a very contagious atmosphere, and I mean, who would say no to that? Who would say no? So, so I'm kind of with you in this second part of your stint of being there, and then some things start to happen, and you decide you feel that it's time to take a step back, if I remember right, in the spring.
Well, it was it started as just an internship, and it grew to a part-time thing, and we just we missed the Church of God, but also we just felt like God was telling us that we did what we needed to do, and we did our best to equip people, and had some good ministry there. We got the choir singing choir music. That was huge. We had weekly music theory classes, which, calm down. It was just the black notes move faster than the white notes, and this is the line that you're supposed to follow. And
Hey,
then,
that's more than I did. So,
well, there were some people who were wonderful in the choir who were really afraid the first choir rehearsal when I put music in front of them. And they wanted to quit, and I didn't want them to quit. And so we did those weekly classes, and our worship ministry kind of blossomed, and it was really good. And so we just felt like, God wanted us to, somewhere else. So
I'm going to put you on this. I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, Matt. Have you heard the recording of your last Sunday there, of the choir that week?
No, but I know that we sang. Oh no, it was a good one.
Mm-hmm. Prepare our hearts.
Yes,
Yeah,
the week before we did another good one. I thought it was that one. But yeah, I
I'll
haven't.
send you. I'll send you the recording sometime because I've listened to that quite a few times since then. It just amazed me, and I mean the like you kind of said. I think what you did was you say that you honored the things of what they did in the past. You didn't change too much. You just took it a couple steps further, especially by doing the theory classes and stuff. But it was amazing to me the sound that came from that group of clear, very clear 4-part harmony
Yeah,
singing the song
not
without a track.
right. Yeah, but
And
so
so that it's a great. I'll send it to you sometime because it's absolutely beautiful. It's great. So you finish up there, in what is it? Do you remember month? Maybe March, April, something like that.
March of 2017 was when I left there.
So that's where my story picks up more. Is I'd kind of been with you in the second part of the journey, and you and I are having lunch, and it's before you end up leaving, but you tell me, you're like, hey, I think it's time. I'm going to tell the board here tomorrow or whatever, or today, I don't remember. But we're sitting um, at a barbecue place, and you're telling me this, and right
The
after you
best
told me
conversations
this,
are over food.
yeah, especially barbecue, you can't go
Right.
wrong with, well,
Right.
you can't go wrong with barbecue, but good barbecue, you can't go wrong with that. We so you say that, and literally minutes after you had told me that, because we had also talked about it, I was like, okay, well then obviously I'm probably not going to stick around either. I was really there to help and support what you were doing there. And we hadn't been there at that church too long at that point. And so just minutes later, I got a text from the worship leaders back in my home church saying, hey, we just told the church that we're resigning. Um, and essentially, like, hey, if you're interested, there's a worship ministry position opened up here. And so through some meetings and stuff with some board members there and stuff like that, and a lot of prayer, because we're talking about, it would mean I would have that myself and my girlfriend at the time, would be driving from Anderson to Frankfurt every Sunday, which is about an hour and 15, hour and a half drive. On a college budget isn't the best. And it was a big decision, but it was something that an opportunity that I had been waiting for quite a while at that point. I had spent the years of not being in worship ministry to recognize that God was calling me into it. And it was an awesome opportunity that opened up. It was awesome to be back in my home church. There had just been a pastor change though. And
Oh,
yeah, and and actually when I started, there wasn't a pastor at the time. There might, again, another one of my cousins was filling in, because through the Church of God, he's what do they call that? An interim pastor or whatever,
mhm.
for when churches are in between. And very soon after that, they end up naming a pastor there. But the church had already gone through not a split, but because when I think of split, I think of people go elsewhere, or they follow that person or whatever. But when the original pastor that had been there, when he left, a lot of people just stopped coming. So it was definitely a rebuilding time. We had some fun experiences with that though as well too. My favorite experience of all of when I look back at the time I've had worship ministries, we did a choir as well, at Christmas, and all those people, most of those people in there had never had a choir experience before, and yet they were willing to try something brand new, and just seeing the joy on their faces when they completed it. I mean, we did a whole cantata. We did the "Let There Be Christmas" by Joseph M. Martin or whatever. So that was an awesome experience. Did the global hymn sing? You came over for that, Matt,
Yep.
which was fun to be a part of. And it was fun. And it's one of those things that when I went into my next job after that, I looked back and I recognized some things that I took for granted, and it was one of those times where I could literally pull out any song, that I wanted to, and the congregation would be willing to try and learn it and sing along to it, and really have a moment of worship in there. And that's you don't see that everywhere. And I found that out very quickly after I was done. But there's just some internal things that were kind of going sour at the time. Also, and this is after about a year and a half or so of being there. And also the whole driving from Anderson to Frankfurt was wearing on me. My wife and I had just gotten married at this point,
Mm.
and we ended up, um, they let us, when we got married, take 6 weeks off, which I'm very thankful for and is very unheard of. But they let us take 6 weeks off. I've really not had a week off before that, maybe like one before that. And so it was a great time for us to finally get to see some other churches, worship together. Very few times had we ever worshiped together at that point, because when we first started dating was when you were at Parkview. So
Right.
it's crazy to think about that. And through some more crazy circumstances, found ourselves over at Parkview, just visiting, and through some meetings and stuff like that, and through what I do believe was what God was calling us to do, ended up becoming the worship leader there at Parkview. Um, and a lot of people ask me, is it weird that you and I were worship leaders at the same church? And my answer for them always was that it never felt like the same church, because right after you had left, there had been a church split. There was some pastoral issues and things like that. Matt didn't cause the church split, I don't think. So
Thank you.
was...
Thank you.
Just thought I should clarify
I appreciate
that. He played one too many hymns, and that's the
One too few.
one too few. Yeah, that's right. And so the church was hurting. It was hurting. There's a lot of pain when we walked through those doors, and a new pastor had just been selected 3 months before we had started. So everything was new. Everything was trying to. We were still even losing people from the church split that had just taken place, and really just trying to find our steps again. And that's exactly what the next 4 years I was there,
Yep.
was us going through a time of transition. We tried. Thing I'm so thankful for about is that we tried so many things. We tried two different kinds of services. We called one the Embrace service, where we're really trying to reach a different demographic than what had been in our church, while also honoring that other demographic by having a classic service. They paid for an actual praise band to be there for about a year. Had so much fun doing that. Also had fun during the pandemic, of doing online church and trying innovative, different things of doing services and reaching people and all that stuff. And the friends we made and all that stuff, just a lot of joy came out of that time. A lot of joy came out of that time, and it was a great way to spend the last few years. But as I said, a lot of things changed during that time. And shortly after I started there at Parkview, I became a teacher. I went through student teaching actually my first few months there at Parkview. But then about a year later, I was teaching the job that I'm in now, and here in Muncie, and that whole thing has just grown and grown and grown to where really, my wife and I really looked at each other, and through prayer had really felt that we needed to take a step back and we needed to kind of surrender this thing of worship ministry, and that's kind of what led me to leaving. We gave the church, I think, the longest, whatever you call it, the longest time. Yeah, the longest terms of notice. I think it was 6 months, and it was honestly a year-long process of wrestling with this too. Of is it time and all that stuff. But
Well, it's so hard to leave a church.
It is.
Even when the reasons for leaving are, because of hard situations, but it's even hard. But especially when things are going well and you just feel God pulling you back, it's so hard to leave.
It's the most ironic thing of this whole thing is that, I'll tell you, Matt, and I haven't said this to too many people, but the thing, I had held on to the whole worship ministry thing for so long. And it was because I mentioned it earlier, I remember the period of time before I finally got the opportunity to be a worship leader, of wanting it so bad and praying for it so bad, and asking God why that opportunity hadn't come up yet so bad. And finally, when in the Lord's time it did come about, it was something that I was holding on to. Like you'd have to pry it from my hands. It was something I was going to do forever and ever and ever. But as soon as I surrendered that to him, and I said, I feel that you're calling me away from this, and you know what, I surrender worship ministry to you. I'm gonna follow you. Amazing things happened after that. I mean, new people started coming in. We started rebuilding a band. Didn't even have on my radar of having a praise band again. I figured I'd just finish out by myself playing piano because that was the COVID restrictions at the time. And by the time I left, we think we had 5 new people in the worship team ministry, and then even 2 or 3 more prospects of adding to the band and stuff like that. Attendance was up, and the church really felt like it started to find its way again. And then that's the time that I leave. But that's what made it so clear to me too that it was the right time. I think we're there to be there for this time of transition to help them while they're trying to find their way. And now that time has been done, I think our time has been completed too. So it's just crazy how that all works out. You talked about how you took a break off. I mean, um, what did that look like for you to do worship ministry again? Because I
So,
remember talking to you, and I knew that had to have been a hard decision.
so we were not fortunate enough to just leave a toxic situation and leave it behind. No, nobody is blameless, including myself in the situation before. But it would just it really made me scared for ministry, and so and my wife was 7 months pregnant when I left the church. Our main breadwinning source of employment. And then a week after our daughter was born, we moved back to Ohio, and I started a job at a factory where I worked every other Sunday.
I love how you always just gloss over this fact, but that was so huge and so brave of you to do. Of you guys are hours and hours away. You're in a completely different state, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And yet you found the courage. I mean, the reason I say so brave is because I think of myself. If my wife was pregnant at that time, and that's our biggest source of income is being at that church, and you leaving it would mean that we need to figure something out or move. I mean, that's insane to me that you're able to do that.
Well, it was scary, and it took lots of faith. We originally didn't want to move all the way back home because we had grown to love it there, but it just got to be to the point where we were afraid of running into people at the grocery store, and that's no way to live. That's no way to heal. And so we moved back home where all our family was and everything. And I spent the next several months working through with my senior pastor, who, some crazy turn of events, I ended up leading worship at his candidating service while I was still employed by the North Carolina church. But he has really just come alongside me and kind of kicked my butt where I needed him to, and pulled me, out of my poor, pitiful me state to realize that God is good and God is enough. I don't need vindication. As much as I may want it, I just need God. And that has been huge. And then I filled in for the month of June in 2021 while our worship pastor was on sabbatical. And that's when I knew that, I'm still afraid of it, God, but I know this is what you want me to do. So I am starting to become more open. And then almost a year later, our worship pastor and her husband moved back to Michigan, and we were without someone. I was still working a job that had me working every other Sunday, but I had a major shoulder surgery. So I was on medical leave for 3 months, which would allow me to be the interim person for a month through the end of May. She left right after Easter Sunday. Easter was her last week. So I led the week after Easter all the way through May on an interim basis. And then God provided me another job throughout that. The church wanted to take the position from full-time to part-time because our attendance had gone down because of COVID. And so I knew I wouldn't be able to take the position part-time because I worked every other Sunday. And that's not fair to volunteers. It's not fair to the congregation. And then God provided another job that gives me every weekend off. And so now I am not officially, I am to be voted on in 2 weeks, but it looks promising. The worship for Church of God.
This is gonna look bad if
I know if they won't vote on me, I don't know. Like, do I find a new home church? That's hard. All my family goes to this church.
I know. All of your family and your in-laws.
I know. My in-laws basically built the church. My wife's grandpa pastored the church for 25 years.
Oh boy. Well, Matt, as we close, what's the whole point of this again? It's kind of like we're starting a new chapter of this podcast. What's the whole point of this podcast again? For people, I'm sure there might be people who are in worship ministry listening. There might be people who are out of it, and they made it unscathed, like myself. What's the whole point of this?
I would say, probably my goal with this is to encourage people of all stages of worship ministry, whether you're going into it, considering it, whether you're the worship leader or a praise team member, or you did it for years and years and years and you're retiring and you want a fresh perspective. Whatever it is, I just hope to encourage people with our stories and with the guests that we'll have, with whatever wisdom that the Lord might give us, and also realize that this is not something that any of us do by ourselves. Our hardest times that we've been through, somebody else has been there.
Absolutely.
And so we are not alone in this. I'll use the Church of God's trademark slogan, "We're better together."
Yeah. I think that's perfect. And the other thing too, I do want to mention is that, if there's anything I did learn is that the title worship leader is something that I truly believe that everybody has who enters into that time of worship. Yeah, we get the honor to be able to be up there and organize things and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, when you choose to go worship Him, you become a worship leader yourself. Or maybe I'm just crazy saying that. So to end, I don't know if you read this, Matt, and it's going to sound really weird for me to say that I'm going to read it, but it's something that I had worked so hard on to write and really prayed about, and it was something that I truly felt like the Lord called me to say. But I'm going to read you my post from after I had stepped away and what worship ministry is, if that's okay.
Okay.
I said, as many of you know, this is on May 1st. As many of you know, last Sunday was my last service as a worship leader. It also marked 5 years to the day of being in the ministry. Today we said goodbye to the church that we spent 3 of those 5 years serving. I am truly filled with gratitude when I think of the last 5 years. I grew up watching all 3 of my uncles, Uncle Steve, Uncle Joel, and Uncle Mike, lead worship every week. I was inspired to do that at a very young age. I'm thankful to all the opportunities I had to grow in that through high school at my hometown church, the place I would later return to in college to begin my time in ministry. I am thankful for all of Wednesday night rehearsals that always ended in a precious time of prayer. The late Saturday nights getting pro presenter ready. The Sunday morning rehearsals that ended on time. All the people in the sound booth I made mad whenever I said, let's repeat that chorus again. The pastors I interrupted that were trying to have some time to focus on the message just so I could hand them the order. Of course, my wife, who was beside me every step of the way, even when that alarm clock went off way too early. The hymns I played too fast, The songs I played too slow. Don't forget the songs I could never get right. Happy birthday. My thankfulness extends to the Sunday mornings that were filled with an open atmosphere of worship pointing to God, which in turn makes me thankful to all who are on this journey with me. The truth is that my title never mattered. When we all make the decision to give up our differences, take down our barriers, and give all of our praise and worship to Him, we all become worship leaders. I just happened to be the guy sitting behind 88 keys, singing along with everyone. And then I ended up saying, something about the person who's taking over for me. And then I thanked both the churches I worked at and said thank you to all who wished us well as we transition to whatever's next. And thank you to all who have been a part of this journey with us. We love all of you. I originally didn't, and I get weird when I write posts and stuff like that, especially because I'm not actually on Facebook as much anymore, except for my job. But I really sat on what I was going to write about it because I felt like I should write something about just thanking some people. But that whole thing, I truly felt God calling me to write was the whole thing about when we make our decision to give up our differences, take down our barriers. And it's crazy that you said that about when you started really entering into the worship service again. So, but yeah. So, well, I'm excited for this, Matt. I'm excited we're going to go on this journey again. We'll see if we make it past one episode within the next 3 years. This is this exciting thing. In the future, when we do other episodes, we'll actually get to hear sometimes Matt's Sunday set list. I have nothing to offer for that. And we'll also talk maybe about some songs that have maybe had a hold on our heart and things like that. So, you have anything else to add, Matt, before we let them go?
No, I think you covered it.
All right. Well, until next Sunday.
All righty.